After 3 months of deck work, we have finally reached the finale, picture-framed stair treads. These stairs were painstaking and were not without challenges along the way.
A little bit of an oopsie.
Good as new. But in true turtle deck construction fashion, we did not rush quality. If you, your spouse, friend, or relative is also a meticulous DIYer who takes plenty of time to do a quality job, join the TDC crew and grab an official t-shirt at the link below. Pre-orders close in 2 weeks, so don't procrastinate. We'll see you bright and early Monday morning on the next job site. Same exact process on this side. Whoa, that was easy. We've come a long way in our deck project, but the last thing to wrap up is this staircase. So this video is going to be all about our custom picture framed stair treads, the fascia that will go on the risers and on the sides of the stringers, and the railing that will go up each side to cap everything off. This is literally the last outdoor project of our build for at least the time being. After this, it's all indoor work to finish out from here. So we're really excited to get this underway, get this done, and cap off the deck project. As you can see, we have some pretty shoddy looking scraps of OSB working as temporary stair treads right now. These things have had probably 5 different uses since they were scraps after framing, and their final resting place is going to be the burn pile. But I was glad to use them as a stair tread in the meantime. So I have like 1 screw holding each one of these things in. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull them all off. That way we can expose all 5 of our stringers and our rough risers. The next thing I'd like to rework is this wraparound stair box at the bottom. I framed it like this in the deck framing video because I thought I was gonna put the railing right here and I would just be rounding off here. But upon further thought, I think I'm gonna model it just like our main staircase is, where the railing actually ends on the 3rd step. It's right in line with the fascia on the 3rd step. And that way you can kind of round the corner a little bit more easily, and the box on our main steps extends out this way as well. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. It's just a little bit more comfortable, I feel like, coming down the steps, especially when we're gonna be turning into the yard or turning in to go to that door quite frequently. And it actually works out better for the spacing of the newel posts because I'll have an equal number of steps between my newel posts by putting the newel here instead of here. It will just look a little bit more symmetrical, I feel like. I'm gonna go ahead and unscrew this. It's just a couple screws holding it all together, and cut some new pieces to go around the back here so this becomes more of a wraparound step. I did a little mock-up of how I want this to look because I don't want any slivers of deck boards, and that would arise from me making the framing too wide. If I would have taken it all the way out to this edge, I would have had a sliver or something that I would have had to account for. So it's gonna be 4 boards wide, and I also have to think about the fascia thickness. So this is a scrap piece of 5/8 fascia. Initially, I thought I wasn't gonna have enough tread to let a nosing overhang the stairs. 2 of these boards plus the gaps is 11 inches wide, which is the same as the framing tread width is cut to. This tread would come out flush with the decorative fascia, but a 1-inch nosing is safer to walk up and looks a lot better in my opinion. I landed on using a 1-inch strip at the back of the tread to push everything out, which I thought would look weird at first, but it turned out to be virtually unnoticeable. And then the framing that I'm gonna cut to fill this gap is gonna come all the way to where the decorative fascia is over here. I could actually leave a little bit of an overhang back here, but that's the idea. I'll just fill this in with framing. And I'm probably gonna run a joist along the side of this guy, at least from here back, so that these deck boards have somewhere to land on at the other end. Of course, I'll also be picture framing the perimeter, so I need blocking, basically solid blocking right at the edge, and I will at the edge of all the stairs actually, for these mitered boards to have something to screw into and support right near the corners. So that wasn't too bad. I was able to reuse both of the parts that I had to disassemble and just had to add that one piece. Now I've got a little mock-up going on the right side here so I can figure out my blocking. That's the next stage here, is how far over do I need to block to be able to get something that this board can land on at the edge and support this full miter. It looks like I could just barely get away with a 2x4, but that's cutting it way too close. So I'm going to use a 2x6 on these end pieces here. Ooh, I pushed quite a bit. All right, I went ahead and did the first couple just to kind of get my feet wet here. A normal one with a piece of 2x6, nails through the side, through this side, and then a couple screws from down up underneath into this rough riser here, and that thing is solid as a rock. I don't think that's going anywhere. This is where my first newel post is gonna sit, so I started by marking them all out so I didn't forget to put these double blocks in. But for these, I'm using some cut off 2x12s from my stair stringers. It's always nice to be able to use some of that scrap up. I'm glad I didn't throw those in the burn pile or anything. Pressure treated 2x12s are not cheap. But these are where my first newels are gonna sit, so I wanna do a full block so I can anchor it into this stringer too and sandwich it on at least 3 sides. It's a double thick block, so 2 pieces of 2x12 laminated, and I just have it kind of tacked in at each corner with nails, and I'm gonna come back with some structural screws and really pin it into these stringers. And I hit it with a bunch of nails, 3 in each 2x12 from the front of the riser here. So this is gonna be pretty rock solid when it is time to come bolt the newel post into it. Now I'm just gonna rinse and repeat this process all the way on up. I need 26 pieces of 2x6 and another 4 more of these double blocks, and we will be ready for joist tape. I was able to scrounge just enough 2x6 scrap and 2x12 blocks that I ripped in half on the table saw to come up with 26 of these. Thank goodness I didn't have to make another trip. And this should also be of note too. I mentioned this in the first video, but my chop saw dust collection system here is actually a baby tent off Amazon. It was 30 bucks. They make real like legit versions of these. I think it's called Chop Shop or something, and it's like $300. But this has been working amazingly. It's got a little pool down there for the baby, and that's what's catching all of the debris. Miter saws are notoriously messy, and anything you can do to try to contain that mess behind them is really helpful. We also have tarps and stuff on the ground. Elena really did not want to get any of the aluminum dust or the composite dust from the deck boards just out in the wild here, because our gardens are going to be pretty nearby. So we didn't really want that. And this baby tent has been a total lifesaver, so I'll link that. What a thing of beauty. Blocking is installed. All of our railing blocks are in and secured with structural screws, and we are finally ready for some fascia. My plan of attack for the fascia is to do the sides first. I was thinking of doing all of the fascias at once, and to take it even a step further, bevel the corners of my side fascia and the front fascia to get a nice mitered corner at each joint here. But the more I thought about it, it's gonna be really difficult to get that perfect all the way down, especially in the long term to deal with expansion and contraction. And I decided I'm just going to do a different detail on the fascia. We'll get to that when we get to it, but I'm just going to straight cut all of the side pieces of fascia and then worry about the treads and risers. Well, in mocking this up, I found we have a little bit of a predicament. This is a 1x12, so it's 11 1/4 wide. This is a 2x12, also 11 1/4 wide from this point to this. However, when you go to put the fascia on, you want it to cover not only this, but also our rough riser we applied too. So that adds a little bit more distance. And when you cover both of them, you're left with about a 1-inch strip at the bottom of the stringer that is exposed. And that does not look very good. I've already checked with the boss, and she does not approve of that strip being exposed at the bottom. But I have a solution that I've come up with, and this is what I'm gonna do. We're putting the same fascia material on all of our risers as well, and obviously we're gonna have to rip down a whole bunch of it. And when I did all of our takeoff calculations, I knew I could only get one riser out of one piece of this. There's not enough for 2. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of offcuts of this much of this fascia material. What I'm thinking is we'll take these 12-foot long offcuts that are, you know, 5 inches wide or so, and then I'll pocket screw that to our fascia board that we're going to be putting here so that we will have a slightly wider fascia board and we won't have that pressure treated lumber exposed. The one caveat to this is I'm going to have to rip the rounded edge off all my other pieces of fascia so that it's a really nice tight square butt edge joint, and that way you don't see the shadow line between the rounded edge and the flat cut edge that I'll be putting up against it. So we're gonna see how that works out. I can't think of a great other way to deal with this other than, you know, extending this piece of fascia, but it is what it is. It takes some time to get things to look just how you want them, and I would guess that most other folks would just live with the little sliver of wood exposed on the sides of the stringers, but not us. Before cutting into the very expensive fascia material, I'm going to spend some time with his here scrap of plywood to get this little angle cut out right. We had a couple different options for this joint, how we're going to get these two things to meet, and what we settled on was just cutting the little triangular shape out of this guy so that this can ride right up to here and we don't touch this board. I was thinking maybe we should cut this board at an angle or something, but figured it would actually look better if we just leave that intact and cut around it for the stringer. We could have also flush cut this as well, but our stringers hang below the ledger a little bit with these Simpson LSCs. It doesn't like look the cleanest anyway, where there's this like sharp right angle here. So that's why we're gonna go ahead and go the template route. Great. Made one little adjustment after the first fit, and I think that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Line the top edge up with the points. And they're not gonna be, you know, dead perfect. Looks pretty good. Yeah, that actually was pretty tight. It's about as good as it'll probably get. 7 1/4 minus 6 13. 7 1/4, 5 Shockingly, it fit really nicely on the first try. Now I'm just gonna go along and start tracing out all of my treads and risers, and I'll cut these out on the ground.
Little bit of an oopsie. The screw kind of started bulging the material, and then here the screw actually went through.
Good as new.
New pocket hole? Trying again. We decided to ditch the pocket holes, and we are just going to be screwing up this board here and then also screwing this board in this little 1-inch section that will have some wood behind it.
Let's get it started hot. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started hot.
Running and running and.
Hold on. Whoa, almost lost my balance. Would not have been good. Oh my gosh.
I think you got to get the middle one clamped.
The top's gonna need some adjustment though, to get it nice and looking good.
Yeah, I think you might just have to clamp as you go.
Well, I don't think that's going to turn out too bad after all. Even after ditching the pocket holes, we were able to get that pretty tight. Not absolutely perfect as you can see, but when you stand back, it definitely does blend in a little bit better. And once we get all those holes plugged, it'll look better too. We're using the same Pro Plug fascia system that we used for the rest of the fascia. Now I'm working on the last little piece down here. I used my plywood template again to get that seat cut worked out. My stringers must not be completely dead straight because when I have these lined up, there is a little bit of a gap here, so I'm going to scribe this angle onto this piece, and that way I can get this gap nice and tight. Once I have that situated, I'll scribe out on the inside all of the stair cutouts again. And there she is, one side completed minus the plug. So Elena's gonna work on plugging all that. I'm gonna start on the other side. Overall, I think it turned out really nice. We tried to get these gaps as tight as we could. It's impossible to get it perfect if they're not totally fastened together, but overall, I'm pretty happy with that. Now to repeat the same exact process on this side. Whoa, that was easy. I even had time for a change of outfit. The next element of the stairs to tackle are the risers and the treads. So I played around for a little bit here and did some mock-ups, made a couple of the risers just to see how I was going to go about this and how I was going to terminate the ends. What I landed on was doing a mitered return on the end so you don't see the exposed black edge of this fascia board. And I'm using 23 gauge galvanized pin nails, like 5 in each direction, to hold that little edge on. The secondary benefit of this technique is to help me compensate for unevenness in framing. This rough riser cupped a little bit, and my decorative fascia is cut straight, so there's like an 1/8 inch or so that hangs back. So I cut my little matching piece at a slight angle to give myself an extra 1/8 inch on the top, so that matches up just a little bit better. There was one example I saw on YouTube by, I believe it was Raven Builders, who mitered their actual stringer fascia at each riser, and then they cut the risers with a 45 to match. I feel like this technique works better when things aren't absolutely perfect, and when working with lumber, they rarely are. There's no glue or anything either to hold these boards together. It's gotta be all fasteners. In Raven Builders' example, they were using PVC, which is a little bit more flexible than this composite, and there's a good reliable glue that you can use to hold the miters together. So I did consider that at first, but decided that I would do something that's a little bit simpler. Granted, there's still definitely some tediousness in this process, cutting each riser board almost custom, really, when you think about how I need to compensate for any unevenness in the stringer fascia, but overall, I think it's pretty simple. Well, that was tedious, but they're all cut and sitting in place now. I just need to do all the pre-drilling and fasten them in. Starting to fasten the fascia boards in now. I'm using Starborn's Pro Plug system, so it's an 1 7/8 inch long stainless screw with kind of a pan head. You pre-drill with their special bit, which puts a counter bore hole in, and then they supply plugs that are actually punched out of the same boards so that the grain matches perfectly when you plug that hole after the screw is in. The hole is also oversized, so it's quite a bit larger than the diameter of the screw. It allows the board to shift around a little bit and expand and contract as needed. We use the same system here in the deck fascia, and as you can see, the fasteners just totally disappear. There's 3 fasteners every 16 inches in this board, and you really can't see any of them from more than 2 feet away. Now, one thing I made sure to do before I came around and put this fascia on is anywhere I'm not going to be able to access anymore, I put some joist tape on. This whole thing is going to be covered in joist tape eventually, but I didn't want to be walking all over it at this point, so anywhere the fascia is going to meet and intersect with the tread, I made sure I put some joist tape just to make sure any water that's, end up sitting on this tread doesn't get back up underneath here and start rotting out really the tops of my stringers is what I'm worried about the most, because that's an end grain there. So with that sealed off, I can put my fascia board down on top of it, and then I will cover this whole thing in tape before we put the tread down. That right there is the beauty of caring about where your fasteners are placed and using a jig. Laser straight lines for the fasteners. Just the little details that just irk me if they're not totally right. Went ahead and did the bottom step off camera. That required a little bit of extra effort just because it's up against this concrete, so slight uneven surface. I had to scribe the bottom and try to get these miters nice and tight at the corners, but it's worked out pretty well. And now we are finally ready for some treads. But before we start that, it's time to put the final layer of joist tape on. So I'm going to put a layer across here and then a few strips of 4-inch wide. My goal is just to sort of seal off all the cracks and especially the end grains of the stringers so that this is basically one fully water impermeable surface that when we go ahead and drive screws through it from the treads, the joist tape does its job. It seals around the screws, and otherwise there's no way that water is penetrating through the top surface of this. Hopefully it's just going to be rolling down off the sides and drying out in the wind. So let's go ahead and get that done. Well, that was easy. Here's the details on the actual tape I've been using for the deck. So most of it has been this Moisture Shield joist tape, which is a layered poly woven tape, very similar to this Mitsubishi G tape. In fact, so similar, I'm pretty sure they're made in the same factory, and this one is private labeled for Moisture Shield, but I ran out of this, so I had to get some more, and it was much easier to buy the G tape than it was to find this stuff. It was a long lead time, whereas this was on Amazon. But there's multiple widths. This is a 2-inch roll back here. These are 4-inch wide. They're all 65-foot long rolls, and this is a layered polyethylene woven tape, good for windows, doors, deck joists, and the key about it is I think that woven structure allows it to seal around screws. I think any sort of impermeable barrier on top of the joist is good, even butyl tape, but I think this is the best stuff. It's acrylic adhesive. It sticks very well once it's applied, but it does not stick to itself. You can tear it easily by hand. They've already pre-scored it. It's just really good stuff. It's expensive, but it's worth it. Even the verbiage for the warranties on the inside of the tape rolls say essentially the same exact thing, which makes me think these definitely were made both by G-Tape. Well, it's actually Mitsubishi Corporation. I guess not only do they make cars and DVD players, they also make flashing tape. So I lopped the tape onto the tape I already had and came out to around halfway on all of the fascias. So I sealed up this seam, and hopefully that will prevent any water from getting down in the cracks here, getting trapped between the fascia and the framing, or seeping into the end grains of the stringer. Now it is finally time for our picture framed stair treads. They're going to be 3 pieces, of course, the U-shape picture frame on the outside, 1 full deck board on the inside, and then about an 1-inch long strip on the inside, which we had to put in order to get our full 12-inch tread width, just because the width of these deck boards is just under 5.5 inches. Even with the gap between the boards, in total it was 11 inches for 2 boards put together. So adding that inch back here allows us to bring the nosing out 1 inch, and that not only looks better in my opinion, but I think it's safer going up the steps as well. So we mocked it up. I think it looks just fine. It's going to use a little bit more material. I might be 1 board short when it comes time to put our top deck board on our railing, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. One quick tip I wanted to share is trash collection when you're doing these tasks that generate a lot of trash, like the backing on this joist tape, generating like, a million little pieces of backing. I found this is also really valuable for electrical work too, with wires and stripping little bits of insulation and copper off that just seem to end up all over the floor and are impossible to pick up. This little guy is a trash bag for your tool belt. This is Diamondback's DB Sacks, but you can use them for anything. I found the best use for these things is a trash bag, because it is just such a pain to be throwing this stuff on the ground and having to go pick it up later. Having just a little pouch to put your trash in, empty out every so often, makes life 10 times easier. Check 1, 2. Where that microphone at? Where that microphone at? There that microphone at. All right. I went ahead and did the first couple off camera just to start to get my process down. The bottom one here, because it was so big, was kind of like doing its own little mini picture frame deck. So that was definitely a pain to get all those gaps as good as I could get them, and they're still not perfect, but it is what it is. And then the second step here, I just cut the pieces out and did the pocket screws at the corner. This is kind of my template, and none of that's fastened in yet, but that's kind of how it's gonna look. I think it actually looks pretty nice. I'm glad that we did do the little overhang. I don't really mind the little strip back there at all. kind of just blends in, don't really see it anyway, and it gives you that inch overhang. I think that's a lot nicer than just doing 2 boards side by side. Now I just have to cut these same parts for the other 14 stairs going up. So I have some major cutting ahead of me. Then I have to pocket screw all the miters together and pre-drill for all the holes in all the right spots. So I think I'm gonna make cardboard templates for all my pre-drill holes, so I'm not even thinking about where those have to be, and just crank them out. There's 75 more pieces of deck board to cut up for these stairs. So let's get to it. Well, that was a lot of cutting and hole drilling, but here they all are. They're just sitting in place right now. I think I counted over 400 holes in total that just got pre-drilled into this first piece here, not counting the other 2. Here's how I did the pocket screw, avoided the 4 holes going down through the deck boards. And then for the center board and the thin strip here, I'm cutting them to length for every step individually to account for any small variations in where these side pieces ended up. They're roughly 1/8 of an inch difference is what I've seen between steps, so didn't want to cut them all at the same time and then have uneven gaps. I have done the first few, and Elena started to come behind me and fill in the screw holes. It's looking pretty good so far. I'm happy with how that's turning out. This is the screws I'm using, by the way. These are Starborn 2 3/4 inch 305 stainless screws. These are the same guys I used for the deck boards where I couldn't use the clip fasteners, and they work really well. I like the fact they're stainless, and like all composite screws, they have that reverse thread at the top to create a nice clean counter bore for the plug to go in. They drive in with this special tool from Starborn as well. It's got a little collar that the end spins on it so it doesn't mar up your board. Then when it gets to the right depth, the collar compresses, and at a certain height, it will let this bit free spin so it can no longer drive the screw in, and that allows them all to be driven to the same depth. Stairs are just so incredibly repetitive. It seems like once you get the technique down on one, the rinse and repeat is literally never ending, but there is actually always an end. So I just got to keep cranking on it. It's just kind of boring, to be honest, and hard to stay motivated for, but we'll montage through the rest of it. Another pro tip about drilling these holes, make yourself a template. This thing saved my life, this old piece of cardboard, and it allowed me to get nice symmetrical hole patterns around my miters without having to do a bunch of tedious measuring. Just slap this piece of cardboard up against it and go to town drilling. After getting the front piece screwed on, I moved to the back piece, got that nice and tight up against the piece of fascia, then split the gaps evenly all the way around with this center board here. I really like how this turned out, even with this little piece in here. Without having a gap against the fascia, it looks kind of continuous, like when you look at it from afar. So really, you're still seeing the main outline around this main center board, and you don't really notice that there's this little strip there at all. I really like that, and definitely like the fact of having that 1 inch overhang. The stairs look so much better with the overhang on them. There you have it, folks. Picture frame stair treads are complete. It was definitely not the easiest carpentry project ever, but we are through it. Alina's been coming behind me to do the plugging, so she's probably about 1/3 of the way done. And it's just really nice seeing all of the symmetrical holes. But to be honest, once the plugs are in, you really just can't see them anymore at all. I'm glad they're in straight lines in case the lighting is, just right and you do see them, but those are ones that are done already, and like you really got to be looking to see those plugs. The railing on these stairs was a whole project by itself, so if you want all the detail on that, check out the video just before this one. The genesis of turtle deck construction is also explained there, so after you get up to speed, pun intended, make sure to grab a TDC shirt for yourself or a friend who values quality construction no matter how slow. Well, folks, that is a wrap on the stairs. They are super sturdy, really happy with how everything turned out. It took a long time to do this part of the project, easily the hardest part of the deck so far, but I'm glad that we took the time to do it right, and it really shows at the end product. Love the black aluminum compass railing for Moisture Shield. Moisture Shield Meridian decking is looking awesome just like it is on the main deck. There is one lesson learned on this set of stairs, which I will always know for the future, especially when using surface mounted railing. Always add a foot of width when you're surface mounting your railing, because I built these stairs at 4 foot wide. I think that it's actually a little bit less. The stair stringers are 44 inches wide from outside to outside, and I thought that was going to be plenty of width. However, when you add these surface mounts, it actually takes off 11 inches of tread width. So that puts me just at 36 inches between these posts, and I have these as far out as I can possibly put them with lag bolts going down into the stringers. So just keep that in mind. It does feel a little bit narrow when you're walking up here because it's right at code minimum stair width. There is a positive to that in that you can have both hands comfortably on both rails at the same time, but just keep that in mind. If I could go back and do all this again, I would make these stairs probably close to 5 feet wide to accommodate these surface mounted railing. If we had fascia mount rails that went on the outside of the steps, or if we had a wall here that just had a wall mounted railing on it, then that would probably be a different story. You wouldn't need to go quite as wide, but that is the one thing that I could change about this decking project if I could go back, is make the stairs a little bit wider. In our case, it would have been kind of tough because the landing would have had to get longer. I would have needed longer than 16-foot joists over there. The footing locations would have had to be pushed out a little bit, so there would have been more to it than just building some wider stairs, but that is my one lesson learned I wanted to pass on when you're designing your deck. Hope you learned something from this video. As always, thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.